It is being bold. It is being brilliant. It's being non-apologetic about what we're doing.
You know, we had to leverage those abilities and just to come to the table and execute like never before.
Bring in capable people, coach them, make sure they're connected to the outcome, and let them run.
As a leader and with your team, have to have the will to win.
Connecting more with our humanity and, pausing for a moment to be the human beings that we are.
But with humility, you know that you can leverage that skill set that people have and let them be their best.
This will be a time of innovation.
Hi, and welcome to Courageous Leadership in Times of Global Crisis and Uncertainty, an HMG live virtual briefing covering what matters most to drive a winning agenda and make the future a better place. A warm welcome to today's host, Lead Principal and CEO of HMG Strategy, Hunter Muller.
Good morning, and welcome. Welcome to the 2020 Atlanta CIO Executive Leadership Summit. Today we're coming to you, obviously virtually, from our Connecticut headquarters with our friends from Atlanta. Really excited to be here with you all today. I think a world-class agenda, unparalleled content and thought leadership, sharing, individuals sharing their thought leadership and experience through this incredibly difficult time. A big shout out and thanks to Duo, our supporting sponsor. Duo, this event is powered by Duo. Really appreciate your engagement. And of course, Atlanta Sim. It's been a great partner with HMG for years, as well as the Georgia CIO Leadership Association. Thank you. And we're busy. We've been busy ever since March 12th of this year when we went digital, engaging folks with our virtual briefings, our CIO Summit model, partner webinars, including additional other items, including the HMG Marketplace that we'll be announcing here shortly. And upcoming, we have almost every week, folks, we have something planned for you well into the summer in 2020. Upcoming Boston CIO Summit on the 28th of May, DC CISO Summit the 29th, Chicago June 2nd, as well as Toronto. As well, consider looking at some of our webinars with both Ring Central, Rainsforce, and so, hey, a big thanks for zooming in. We're going to dive right into the program here. Our first guest, proud to have Jay Ferro, CIO of the Quikrete companies. Jay's been there almost 2 years. It's the largest manufacturer of concrete and cement mixes in the US and Canada. Quikrete products are manufactured in hundreds of facilities. You know, Jay's got an amazing background, some 25 years as a tech leader, CIO. I think actually, Jay, when you and I first met probably over 12 years ago, you were talking digital back then. You're also on numerous boards, including nonprofit, and you always have time to get back to the community. So again, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Hunter. Great to see you.
Always, it's a pleasure. So, you know, Jay, this is unprecedented, what we're going through, right? Let's just face it. It's a little bit off the charts in terms of a professional experience and a personal journey, right?
Yes.
So what are the lessons learned that you've experienced over the past 8 or 9 weeks, and how's your leadership style evolved and changed?
You know, I think for me, Hunter, it reveals this is an opportunity, and you're right, it's unprecedented, right? And it's a once in a generation type event at a scale we couldn't even fathom. We talk about disaster recovery, we talk about business continuity, things like that in IT, and this is at a level that none of us really thought would happen in our lifetime. But I think opportunities like this or situations like this reveal leadership. So I don't know that it's morphed my leadership style more as much as it's revealed it. If you're not a competent leader and you're not a servant leader when times are calm, you sure as heck are not going to be one during crisis time. So to me, this is a huge challenge, but it's also a huge opportunity for leaders to show both individually and organizationally what they've been doing and how their style can benefit their people and their organization. So it has gone as much as humanly possible, as much as it could have, very well for me and my organization, thanks in no small part to the hard work of our group here. But it's an opportunity to reconnect with people, show that you value them more than anything, and reveal that leadership style in times of crisis. That's what it's done.
I love that comment, that note of it really is about people, right? Both people in the business, in the market, your IT organization. It really reveals really what the individual leader's characteristics are all about in terms of humanity. On a personal level, what has it meant to you to lead through this crisis?
You know, this is what we prepare for. It's always a challenge. We're concerned about ourselves, our families, you know, our team, our friends, and you know, for us, it's a huge challenge. I mean, I have 3 boys, and thankfully they're home and they're safe and healthy, and I'm glad to have them all under one roof. I'm not sure that they're as excited about that as I am, Hunter, but I am glad to have them home. My parents are doing well, my sister and her family, and you know, my friends, we stay connected. But to me, it's an opportunity, right? It's an opportunity to show that all the work we've done over the last 2 years has paid off. It's a chance to show this organization and our customers and our colleagues that all the investments we've been making and the improvements that we've been making have paid off, and we're here, we're a leader in the organization, and we're not going to let this beat us.
Where do you go in times like this to get support from CIOs, and where do you find your strength?
Well, my faith first and foremost, but after that, my friendships, including forums like this, Hunter, and obviously you and I have been friends for a long, long time, but groups like HMG, groups like Georgia CIO and ATP and others, iron sharpens iron. So, I mean, I have so many of my good friends, Becky, JJ, and so many others in this event, Lee, who I learned from every day. And if I can be a cautionary tale of what not to do for them, then that's a good thing. But I'm inspired every day by my colleagues. And then lastly, I'd say, Hunter, it's the folks who are on the front lines, our first responders, our healthcare workers, the folks who are really having a tough time through this. And you see individual stories and group stories of heroics happening every minute of every day. If you don't look at that and get inspired, then you've got to check your pulse, because what we're doing is super important, but there are folks out there putting their lives on the line to keep people healthy. That's inspiring to me as well.
Awesome. Great comments. Thanks, Jay. You know, when you think about preparing for the future, how are you getting your organization ready to hopefully embrace this upturn in the economy?
Well, I think we've put in the fundamental building blocks over the last couple of years. I really do. And to me, the fact that we were, quote unquote, ready as much as we could be for something of this scale shows that we made investments in the right areas. To me, you've heard me say this before, I have 5 key tenets when it comes to stabilization and revamping an IT organization: simplification, standardization, security, efficiency, and effectiveness. Those are tenets that have never changed and will never change, because if I'm doing all of those very, very well with a singular focus on people and delivery and value, we're going to be successful to take advantage of market opportunities when things recover, right? Because we won't be doing disaster cleanup for the next 6, 12, 18 months. We'll have come out of this ready to take advantage of opportunities.
You know, when you think of the role of a CIO now, you've been in it probably close to 30 years. I'm always amazed at how we continually innovate and continually change and continually lead, and now more than ever in the C-suite, the board, and the line of business. Do you feel blessed, or that it's the best time ever to be a technology leader now, Jay?
Oh gosh, yeah. I've heard you say that many times, and I nod my head every single time. I love what I do. It's an absolute privilege to be a CIO or a CTO or a C-suite executive or a technology board member in today's environment. I mean, it's challenging for sure right now, but if you love what you do, then how do you not love all the new forces that are at work in our space? And, we talk about, are you a strategic CIO? Are you a operational CIO? And I try to be a complete CIO. And my friend Tim and I have talked about this, and I know he and I are in agreement, Tim Crawford and so many others. There's not one or the other. If you're focusing on one or the other, you're in big trouble. Both your career is going to be limited. It will be careers over. The complete CIO has to keep operationally focused, to keep those trains running on time, to keep the organization as efficient and effective as it can be at all times. You also have to be strategic. That to me is the complete CIO, right? The total package. And that's what I strive to be.
That's a book right there. I'd love to co-author that with you, Jay.
Yes, it's copyright Jay Ferro and Hunter Muller, 2020, The Complete CIO. There it is.
The Complete CIO by Jay Ferro and Hunter Muller. I love it. So, hey, on a personal note, how do you balance the whole lifestyle, the work style, working at home and remotely?
You know, luckily, going back to what you said, I love what I do. So that passion fuels you, right? That passion gives you energy and lift. I want to be a good example for my sons. I don't sleep much. So there's that. I've been a widowed single dad for 13 years. So for me, you know, you dig deep, you put your people first. And when you love what you do, it doesn't really seem like work. But look, I mean, you also have to, and I remind CIOs all the time and leaders, you have to take time for yourself to recharge. You're of no use to your kids, your family, your loved ones, your team, if you're not taking the appropriate time to take care of yourself too, to get proper rest, exercise, eat right, etc. So always make sure to recharge as well.
Jay, always great advice and great to be with you here today. Kind of closing comments, how the relationships changed with your team at work?
They've gotten closer, believe it or not. Isn't that ironic that it takes a pandemic to build closer relationships? And you know, I think at some point you take for granted the hallway conversations, but this has forced a deeper dialogue, you know, through virtual tools and all the things that are at our disposal, and has really emphasized even more so the human element, both within my company, but also within my peer network and my personal friendships, where you know, it's just amazing how much the technology has helped us, and it really has shown me how lucky we are to have such a vibrant community. So I'm very thankful for that.
It's a brilliant comments, Jay. One last parting thought on how unique the Atlanta, Georgia community is.
Well, you know, I'm biased, Hunter, and I love our community. It's truly friends. As we were prepping for the call and I see all the Zoom squares, it's like, I know everybody here and I consider them all friends. We truly are the greatest CIO community in the country. Again, I'm biased, but we're friends and we have amazing leaders that lean on each other constantly, and I'm grateful to be part of it.
Great job, Jay. You can stay with us through the program. We're going to bring all the panelists back together at the very end. Thanks, Jay. Great job.
Thanks, Hunter. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Okay, next up, Becky Blaylock. Becky is known and loved by many people world around, certainly in North America, definitely in the Atlanta market. A public company board member, IT thought leader, and former CIO, over 30 years of business leadership and CIO experience, a published author as well. Dare, straight talk on confidence and career for women in charge. Becky, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Hunter.
Great to see you. And I see you're coming in from your lake house. Great to have you here.
It's wonderful to be here. Great to reconnect with some of my CIO friends.
Oh, you're a sweetheart. And thanks for jumping in the HMG platform and model. So Becky, hey, here's a couple of questions for you. All of us are thinking about what's next in life. What's next for the CIO? What's next for the tech leader, a CTO or CISO? What prepares tech leaders to get on corporate boards, publicly traded corporate boards? And do publicly traded companies need technology professionals on boards?
It's a great question, Hunter, and it's been a good next step for me for phase 2 in my career. And I think it's a great step for any CIO who wants to continue to operate at that strategic level. Maybe you're retiring out of the CIO role, or maybe you're looking for some additional training as a CIO. I think that serving on a corporate board would make you a better CIO because you understand better what it is that a board is looking for from you as the CIO. But it's difficult to prepare for these roles, and you can't apply for them because they don't post these jobs on Monster Board and places like that. You have to have a very strong network if you want to get on a corporate board. And I tell people that if this is what you want to do next in your career, you need to start preparing for it, because the CIO role does give you great insight to what's happening across the company. I find that when I talk to large groups of people who serve on boards, there's sort of a mixed group. There's some people who don't want a CIO sitting on their board. These tend to be older people, because the average age of people that serve on a board is 62 years of age, and they're afraid of technology. That's the only reason I can understand why they would say something like that, because they'll say, oh, we really don't want somebody that's just technical and siloed and really doesn't understand risk at the corporate level serving on our board. And I'm like, a CIO has to understand risk across the organization. Yes, they've got to understand IT risk, but they've got to understand better what the corporate risk is, because every company is becoming a digital company in today's world. And IT has a role to play in eliminating that risk. And if the CIO doesn't understand that, I don't think they can be successful in that role. And they'll say, well, we can hire a technical expert to come and tell us what we need to know about IT. And what makes no sense about that to me is that they have an accounting group that they are under law to hire to look at the books and make sure that all their accounting numbers are accounted for. But yet you still have to have a financial expert. According to the SEC, you're required to have a financial expert on your board. But yet all of that is on top of a technology platform. And there's nothing that says you have to have a technology expert. And so my view is that over time, the SEC is probably going to require public company boards to have a technology expert as somebody who is a member of the board. And I think that creates a great opportunity for CIOs. It hasn't happened yet. And certainly COVID-19 has, disrupted everything. But I would say that probably in the next 5 years, you'll be required not just to have a financial expert, but also to have a technology expert who sits on the board. But I would say not all CIOs want to or probably should be at the board level. We all know there are CIOs who are order takers, who see their job as keeping the technology up and running and making sure that if somebody calls them, they deliver on what it is that they want. And that's no small feat. Keeping all this stuff up and running and interconnecting is, I'm not trying to downplay that, because I was a CIO for 9 years. I know that's hard to do. But what they're looking for is somebody who is driving strategic change in the company. And so if you're not a CIO who has a seat at the table, who's driving the technology decisions in the company and working with everybody across the board and understanding corporate risk, you're probably not somebody who it's going to be a natural transition for you to go to a board. I spend a lot of time talking to CIOs who want to get on boards, and there are things that you can do to prepare. The first thing I would say is, make sure you never miss an opportunity to present to your own board in your company. And if you're not sitting in on the full meeting, ask to sit in on the full meeting so you can understand how boards operate, because it's very different than what goes on at the corporate level. Your job as a board member is not to run the company, it's to try to guide and advise and to and hold the CEO accountable. But the other thing is to ask for support from your CEO. This is something that I never did, but I look back and I think I wish I'd just gone to my CEO and said, look, I want to get on a corporate board. And I'd appreciate your help, because if you have that conversation with them, they'll be on the lookout for you. Although there are some companies that don't want their executives serving on corporate boards, because there is a huge time commitment associated with it. But truth of the matter is, I think you could be a better CIO if you had a seat at the table and a board position in a company. The other thing is to serve on advisory.
It makes a lot of sense, Becky, doesn't it? Now, so question for you, is it the best time ever to be a CIO now because you're in such high demand? And what would you say in terms of a leadership style, coaching them to get getting comfortable with being uncomfortable and getting into the boardroom, right?
Well, I think if this is something that you want to do, then you need to prepare for it. And you need to understand that it's a very different role than being a CIO, and it is a time commitment. And legally, the company is being looked at for your board participation. There are groups that oversee boards, a group called Glass Lewis and a group called stockholder services. And they will write reports on how well the board is participating. And if you're not participating well, they will vote against you in the proxy statement. So there's a lot of oversight, and there's a lot of pressure on the board to make sure that the people that are on the board are coming to meetings and are fully participating. And the worst thing that could happen for a company would be for them to say one of the board members has not attended, the meetings. And it'd be an embarrassment for you personally to have that said about you and to be voted against, because it's all in the public domain. But anyway, it is a time commitment, and it's not just 4 meetings a year or 6 meetings a year. I will tell you, on the boards that I'm on, particularly with COVID-19 going on right now, I am working a lot every single week on various different issues. We have a huge supply chain issue with one of the companies whose board I sit on right now. And I can't tell you how I've just had to drop everything and focus on that. And so if you don't have the time to commit, the worst thing you could do is allow yourself to be put on a board. Because once you go on a board, there's a big public announcement about it. And if you come off of a board, there's a public announcement about it. And the company has to report it in their 8K. So that's why you also want to make sure your homework.
Great. Thank you.
I'm
Becky,
sorry, I
great
didn't hear that.
to have you on the program. One last final comment, question. Why is it important for people to look to get on boards?
Well, I think that if you want to stay engaged, if you've served your time as a CIO, you want to take that and leverage it to the next level. I think it's important. I think boards need technology professionals. That the future is all about how these companies digitize. And if you talk to most boards, they'll tell you, oh, we want somebody that knows something about cybersecurity. And I'm like, yes, that's important. You do need to have somebody that knows what questions to ask. But to me, the bigger role that the CIO can play is make sure that the company is taking the right look into the future and doing what they need to digitize the company, and or they're not going to be around in another 10 years.
Hey, Becky, thank you so much for coming on the program. Really appreciate your being here. See you soon.
Thanks, Hunter. Bye.
Great. Okay, next up, we're going to roll in leading courageously through a crisis panel led by Dr. Ken Russell. Panelists, please come to the program. And Ken, it's over to you.
Hey, good morning, Hunter. Thank you very much. Great start. I'm telling you, this has been great information. I typically do mind maps when I do these things, and I'll share it on the chat a little bit later on, but just words that just kind of popped out. Empathy, humility, enabler, participate. Those kind of words matter for leaders, especially as you go through a crisis. So before we get started here, while I'm waiting for the team to come along on the meeting here, I did an exercise this morning. Where I just said, okay, I'm gonna take 5 minutes and I'm gonna look at the headlines on LinkedIn and see what just pops out today. So COVID-19 blamed for 238% surge in cyber attacks in banks. COVID-19 piracy, what about privacy? What about AI and robots? The coming disruption to higher education. And then finally, I kind of stopped after this one. Companies who embrace remote work will replace every company who doesn't. So there's a lot going on. And it's a great time to be courageous. So the question is, are you leading courageously, folks? Is your brand, your culture, is it relevant in harsh times as well as it is in the prosperous times? And then what about safety? My colleague over at Sage, Timothy Harfield, says that innovation can't even happen without people in an organization, without people feeling safe. So when safety, with safety comes confidence, right? So for our organizations, for our customers, for our partners, to be courageous in a world of constant change. So what a leader does and how he or she does it is of great importance, especially during these times of crisis. And how leaders perceived by his or her followers is a key component of understanding their overarching leader effect. So followers then may be motivated to do more than expected because of their feelings of trust, of admiration, of loyalty, and respect for a leader. A courageous and motivated leader, however, a leader aware of the importance of everyone's contributions, impact, and value to that organization. Which leads us to our first panelist today, and I hope he's here because I don't see him on here, but Gary, are you around? Gary from the city of Atlanta?
Yes, I'm around. Can you hear me?
Hey, Gary. Yeah, you sound great. You sound great. Good morning. And so with all this stuff that's happening, and we talked about unprecedented, we've talked about being a servant leader, how to just take care of your culture, all those things we have been kind of circulating these past half hour or so. But with you, these unprecedented sudden changes in circumstances in Atlanta, what have been your courageous keys, to kind of do some alliteration here for you, to keeping services running?
Yeah, so I think when you look at government in general, right, you know, there are a lot of obstacles and a lot of courageous obstacles that you have to overcome in order to even make the adjustments for services to continue to run within the city of Atlanta. And so, you know, when you look at the scale and also the amount of things that you're responsible for, the first thing that I wanted to really focus on was making sure that my team and also those who report up through that area were in the right mindset to really start to handle the adjustments that we were going to actually start to make. And so, you know, we spent a lot of time focused on people. In this event, we've gone from a virus on a computer to a virus within a human. And, you know, 18 months ago, we had probably one of the biggest cyber attacks almost in the US history, especially as it relates to a government entity. And so really developing muscle memory and making sure that as a leader that the team was able to really respond to the sudden and rapid changes that were getting ready to take place within the city of Atlanta. In some cases that would affect lives. You know, when you start looking at all of the things that we support, from public safety to traffic to the world's busiest airport, there were a lot of courageous things that we had in place, or there was a lot of courage that needed to take place in order for the adjustments to be made in order to support the city of Atlanta. And so, you know, again, I'll go back to the first thing I said. We really focused on making sure that our team had the right mindset. We needed to make sure we were flexible, and you know, and they also needed to understand that making a mistake is okay. You know, it's how we recover from it. And so those are some of the areas we really focused on around courage for the city of Atlanta.
Thank you, Gary. I appreciate that. And we'll come back to you in a moment, but you got me thinking about this thing about mindset, and I'll toss it over to Lee Crump. Lee, I know you've been through something similar, but certainly not as drastic as this, but can you talk about your mindset and maybe the adjustments you guys are making over at Rollins? What's taken the most courage for you, and what's been hardest as a leader during this pandemic?
I think the hardest thing as a leader always should be, if you care about your people, the cuts that have to be made, and you always need to, you know, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, and that's always a tough thing. And you, because in terms of furloughing employees, as well as the remaining employees taking salary cuts, those are always tough things. And I think the key to leadership is honesty and clarity. And frankly, if you don't care about people, you shouldn't be in management anyway. But that's probably the hardest thing, is making sure that there is a business to come back to.
That's a good point. That's a real good point. That's twice we've heard the term people as part of this. And before, during Hunter's interview sessions, we talked about being empathetic and those things. We've heard about being flexible, being very clear. So let me toss it over to Andy. I mean, excuse me, to Adam Noble. Sorry, Adam. You know, courageous leadership is, especially during a time of crisis, can mean different things to different people. With this idea of mindset, of people, and of clarity, can you add anything to this? What's going on in your world, and what are you doing differently during this crisis that will help differentiate your company in the future?
Great, thanks for the question, Ken. First and foremost, I'm new to the Atlanta community, the CIO community, so I just wanted to give you maybe a quick introduction on who I am. So first of all, thanks for bringing me in. I'm from the Northeast. I know the community has been great in bringing me in. Veritiv itself is an $8 billion global distribution company. And in 24 hours, similar to what everybody else had to do, we had to go from operating in the office to a complete global workforce in 24 hours. And the beauty of that is we've stabilized our model and our customers continue to operate because we continue to operate. So Ken, you ask about courageous leadership. What I think courageous leadership is right now is, you talked about it. One is, first and foremost, is understanding what people are going through, that people don't have childcare. They need to continue to operate. So the flexibility to actually work with people in your organization and make sure you're focused on getting the job done and allowing the flexibility and people to do the things that they need to do. Once you stabilize that model, I think the most important thing is, what do you do coming out of this crisis? So to me, leading courageously is not just operating and running your business, but looking at those strategic items that are going to make you a stronger company to come out of this. What's going to give you that competitive advantage when you emerge from this crisis? Because there was an article today published that showed that IT spend is going to drop almost 8% in the next year. Well, can you be courageous and be one of those organizations that's actually going to either continue to invest in strategic opportunities and come out as a leader? So I really think that's where the opportunity is, to work with your people, work with your leadership team, and figure out what's next, because that to me is going to bring the leaders going forward.
That's a great comment. You know, and again, there's that word again: flexibility, stabilization, rapid change. Particularly this idea. You know, a couple months ago, when this all started, we were like, it was within 24 hours, as you said, and just changes things dramatically. So let's bring Roxanne in on this for now. I'll come back to you in a minute. Roxanne Seymour from Serta Simmons Bedding. Have you ever seen or led during a crisis like this before? And have any of those kind of principles, you know, flexibility, stabilization, any of those kind of principles, have they kind of, will they transfer to what's going on with what we're in right now?
Sure. I mean, obviously, we've never seen anything like this before, but, you know, I have been involved in other crises where systems have crashed. We've lost our database or servers or application for days at a time or weeks at a time, and you're trying to get all of those services restored. So there's been those kind of crises, but certainly never anything like this. I think some of those principles did transfer over. Number one, you have to step up from a communications perspective and support everybody who's got a part in recovering your services and keeping the lights on, let's just say. So you have to make sure that you communicate. You have to make sure that you are calm so everybody else remains calm. And you have to make sure that you execute to the plans that you have put in place. So we've all created these disaster recovery plans and business continuity plans over years and during our career. But you have to have faith and confidence in those plans and execute accordingly. So as long as you're remaining calm and executing to the plan, you know, things go very well, and keep communicating with your team so they know what's going on and everyone can feel at ease. I think probably the biggest thing is, you know, usually when you're working on a crisis, you're contained within the IT organization. You have occasional communication with the business and your business constituents across the company. Now you have to communicate with everybody across the company, and that's been a little bit uncomfortable. You know, how do you taper the language so that everybody can understand what this means from an IT perspective, or what it means to not click on links from a security perspective, or not download software that they, you know, perceive as freebie, and, you know, it will gain some productivity, right? And so you really want to make sure that you're communicating with everybody across the board, not just your IT team.
That's a really good point. And you've brought the word communicate up, and we haven't really talked about that so far during this session. And I know we've been only doing it for a few minutes, but it really is important. But because I'm an academic of sorts, you gave me a learning model just now. I don't know if you realized it or not, but you gave me 4 C's, 4 C words, starting with communicate. And then you said calm. And then you said continuity. And then confidence. There's 4 C's. Those are pretty incredible. Communicate, calm, continuity, confidence. So very powerful. So thank you for that. And I think our audience will appreciate that as well. And I'll come back to you in a moment, Roxanne, but let's toss it over to Dan Weber from UST Global. Dan, a lot going on here this morning, a lot of words popping out here. How are you guys innovating over there and being courageous during this time of COVID-19? Any interesting projects or anything going on there?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. My favorite quote from Walt Disney was, "It's kind of fun to do the impossible." Who would have thought that we would be in a time like this, right? I mean, looking back, we had September 11th, and that was a huge piece to a lot of companies, right? Travel shut down and all that. Nobody could have anticipated what we have going on today. I mean, I think one of the things that, the biggest thing in innovation too is a lot of it is listening, right? You have to really listen not only to the people that work with you, you have to listen to your customers, you have to listen to the other C-level folks that are involved with you. That invokes then understanding, right? What is happening within each of the areas within it. And that gives you the opportunity to innovate. And I'll say innovate securely, right? We've talked about security over and over again. There's so much going on with new phishing attacks. People are now distributed into arenas whereby you have absolutely no control over their environment, right? And, we love to have control over places that we're in. If we have a physical office, obviously we innovated very early in the whole digital transformation piece almost over 5 years ago. I mean, for me, it's been amazing. I mean, the discussions that I've had with our team in the healthcare arena, a band that will sit there and measure a temperature for folks in areas and such, and that's going into different solutions. I think the coolest thing is that, we've got this little sensor that goes on to joints, and you talk about telemedicine. Well, think about the whole thing about being able to do orthopedic, right? And monitor people's exercises and be able to do that. So, what used to be not possible for folks because there was everything that had to do with HIPAA and privacy and everything else now people are saying, hey, we got to figure out innovative ways to continue to be involved with patient care and do all other types of things that are out there because, eventually we are going to have America reopened and such, but ongoing, people are getting really happy and used to all of these new services that are popping up in all these different industries. And so, it's going to be interesting to see what the new norm is.
That's a really great point. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and toss it over to our friend Gary again at City Atlanta, because you said services and you talked about, well, I guess I put the word innovation down as you were talking about it, but then I put the word accelerating innovation. One thing this pandemic has done for us is that we're just thinking different ways. I mean, it's almost talk about the word transformation. Instead of going this way, we are actually turning and going this way on a dime. So Gary, back to you. I mean, kind of wrap this all up for me on this. We're working remotely, a newfound reliance on working remotely. So I guess there's that word flexible again. But how do we ensure, like Dan was saying, this idea for innovate securely? How do we, make sure that we have watertight measures? And then finally, what kind of opportunities will be afforded to your IT teams to innovate in a new environment like this, to create and experience stronger IT services?
Yeah, and that's really interesting that you asked that question, because this has really been, I've always tried to look at how we can make the most out of this as an organization. It's here, but where are the areas that we can, better help the organization and really advance quickly? And I'll tell you, one of the biggest surprises to me has been the pace of rapidly adopting technologies that would have taken years to adopt has been an eye-opener. And so it's not only been an eye-opener for the IT organization, it's been an eye-opener for the entire city. And so to be able to see that those types of transformations can take place. I mean, who would have ever thought that a city of this size could move completely paperless in a week and a half time frame? That's pretty unheard of. It would have taken me 2 years just for that conversation to permeate throughout the entire organization. And so when you look at what opportunities exist for our organization as we walk through this, we're looking at ways where these services can continue, what's working, what's not working. And I think, as we continue to move forward, security will be, you talked about security, that's at the top of the agenda. We have our devices, we have our employees in areas that are foreign to us, and we are figuring out on a dime how to make those areas a lot more secure and safer for the organization. And I think that it's really stretched our minds. It's really stretched our thought process on how we can and operate as a city. There's been this myth out there around government and cities that they're slow to rapidly deploy. I will tell you, coming out of this, you will see probably one of the biggest transformations in the history of government, not just government, but also in the history of the United States. This is a pivotal moment for us, and I believe innovation is at its highest right now because we are taking the opportunity to really take advantage of this and really use our mindsets to stretch our thought process. Now, I do want to say one thing, but before I end, I think one thing that we will continue to focus on is there are a lot of health issues. I think our biggest challenge has been the people component and what they're dealing with outside of this. Normally when there's a crisis and it's an IT crisis, right, you don't have anything that's normally affecting the health of your employees. And so really being able to be sensitive to that and deal with that on top of showing leadership in this time has been, I think, one of the biggest challenges that we've been facing. So
yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we can't forget the fact that there are people out there being effective for everything that we do. I think back in the day, we used to be able to just kind of do technology, but as we learned from, Hunter's earlier sessions a few months ago to our sessions here, it's all about people and how we interact with people. It's not the technology at all. I mean, the technology works, but we do it for the benefit of everyone. I'll tell you what, let me kind of take it over and toss it over to Roxanne, because Gary, you said something interesting, this idea of rapid pace, this idea of eye-opening, and the word pivot introduced into our conversation here today. And that's a big word, how to move quickly, how to turn quickly, how to stretch, all those things. But Roxanne, one thing I'd like to ask you about is, a lot of leaders out there may get paralyzed by this, frozen during a time like this. What would you advise leaders that they need to be doing during this time?
I think the biggest thing is you, again, go back to that C word we talked about earlier, is you have to have confidence in yourself. You have to have confidence in your decisions. And you can't get paralyzed, because once you do, everybody else will shut down. So, you really need to make sure that you have confidence in everything that you do. You have to make decisions. You have to make them quickly, but don't make decisions that box you in a corner. Make decisions that you can pivot on a dime if you need to, right? You have to be flexible. You have to be able to change if something isn't working. Certainly, you're not going through your traditional, will this work and let me test it out and then let's put it into production. You're moving very quickly, and you're going to just have to make decisions and then change if you need to make decisions. So don't box yourself in a corner. Make sure you're confident and go with what you need to do.
That's a great point, and thank you for that. And again, the C words keep coming out there. But Adam, back to you on this. Courageous, calm, confidence. What are you guys doing over there? How is the organization changing during this crisis? Anything differently you guys are doing over there?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Ken. So yeah, everything's pretty much changed. But prior to going to this model, I've been with the organization for a year. We were driving towards what I refer to as speed to impact. So how do we work more agile as an organization that has the greatest impact, not only on us, but on the customer experience? What I've seen is we've looked at laser focused in terms of what we're doing. I've seen people work in a more agile model. We've gotten rid of the thrashing where you're working on 75 different things. We've had focus on things that matter to the business and the impact to the business. And you've seen that. I've got examples where my organization, we have daily stand-ups now as a leadership team. The business has daily stand-up. We're meeting more regularly. You're not seeing the thrashing going from one solution to another. It's really laser focused on what matters to the business. And people are less focused on perfection and building these enormous systems to try to get it perfect. And we've been delivering solutions that are good enough. We get them to the market, they have the impact, and then we modify it as we go forward. And this has actually happened in the 7-8 weeks that we've actually been in this model. And the nice thing about this is something that's going to stick. It's going to stay with the organization. We've already talked about, as a leadership team, how do we continue to expand our agile model and continue to do things like daily stand-ups, looking at solutions that have greater impact, greater speed to the market. So I really think we've changed at a much faster pace than I thought we were going to be able to change. And we're going to keep that in place as we go forward.
That's really good. And that's actually kind of positive. So thank you for that. It's good to hear some positive come out of this. I mean, speed to impact, this idea of good enough, kind of going back to the old Pareto principle of 80-20, just getting things done, right? So expanding the agile model, who would have thought, right? Who would have thought that one thing, whether you're doing Kanban or whether you're doing just agile and stand-ups every day, the people part of that's important too, because you're literally communicating with everybody again and not stopping that motion. So Let me take it back to Lee here. Yeah, thank you, Adam. That's really good because Lee, I think about you and your work over the years and things like that, particularly with regard to making a difference. Can you talk a bit about what you've been most proud of in the past couple of months? Keep it positive, like Adam was talking about. What's the proudest you've been over the past couple of months during all this craziness?
I think the business operations component of the business has always appreciated and felt like their IT department was doing a good job for them. But what I'm proudest of is 2 or 3 weeks into this thing, the executive steering committee, which is the top executives in the company, we were basically working in an agile mode ourselves, coming together every day for 2 hours of meetings and strategizing and prioritizing. And there was not a day that went by that somebody didn't say, wow, your team has just done an incredible job. I had no idea that we could do all this. And, things like Teams, we were all over the 500 locations across the US, and we've got people traveling all the time. And of course, we've been saying, hey, let's take advantage of Teams. And yes, you have to get out and be with people sometimes, but not every time. And we spend an awful lot of money on travel. Well, I think it was Roxanne earlier that said that, there's we've taken what probably would have, and under normal circumstances, taken us 2 to 3 years to get people to adapt and start using. They've had to use to survive. And as a result, they really like it. So I think we're going to see a real difference going forward. I don't think we're ever going to be in a mode where we don't have an office, we don't have people coming together. I think it was that great philosopher, Barbara Streisand, who said people need people. And even introverts, I think they might not want to talk to them, but they like being around people. So I think we're going to see more remote work, and we're going to take advantage of technology. But I don't think, not at least not in my lifetime, we're never going to see offices go totally away. So, no,
that's a great point. People needing people, very, very cool. Who would have thought? Barbara Streisand. Thank you for that. Let's finish up with.
I wonder if anybody's old enough to remember who Barbara Streisand is.
Why don't you sing a bit for us, Lee? Sing a few little bars of it for us. No, but let's finish up with the. Oh, you did it. He's going to do it for us.
People
I'm going to edit that out.
People.
I love it.
That's it. I'm done.
I'm not sure I can bring that back. I'll just end it now. Okay, we got a couple of minutes left. I do want to go ahead and make a quick little shift for you, Dan. We had a question that came in as we were talking. So if you can finish this up for us, and we'll go ahead and turn this over to Tim in the next session. But do you think this is really a transformational time for the direction of IT in general with regard to risk? And will it speed up a movement to cloud and virtualization? I mean, we were already kind of heading that way anyway. And I know you're doing a lot of great things over there at UST Global, but can you kind of opine a bit on that question about the speed and velocity of cloud and virtualization for us?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. We talked about security. We talked about all the other things. I mean, given where we're at, nobody saw that. And you've heard each of the people talk about the fact that now the timelines have gotten so compressed down. And the only way to do that is actually moving to cloud, right? We as an organization, we moved to cloud a long time ago. We do a lot of things that are in the cloud. I mean, we've got 25,000 employees that are virtual. But yes, with that along the way, building in the risk model, understanding, you know, where are the security factors around it. It's one of the weird things about it is a lot of times I tell people know how to exit before you enter the cloud because there are risks that are involved. Even some of the data centers. One of the times I asked one of the fellow CIOs, I said, have you ever been to the data center? Have you ever walked around it? And then when they said, well, no, we haven't. I said, did you realize that a train track is however many feet away from the back of it, right? Are you aware of, you know, floods that could happen down near a thing here at Six Flags? There's those type of things that need to be asked. We can't go physically and visit a lot of these data centers today, right? But having to know what questions to ask, knowing, you know, part of it, the interesting one was at one time we were looking at a provider in an add-on to CRM from project management standpoint. And this was about the same time we talked about disasters, right? The incidents over in Japan with earthquakes and all of that, and started asking the questions. Okay, you guys are based out of Portland. That's great. Okay, where's your backup data center at? Well, it's in Seattle. Well, there happens to be a fault line they talked about on CNN the night before the meeting, right? Okay, well, where are your people located at, right? Because if everything, you know, goes to hell in a handbasket, how are you going to deal with the people? Are you guys actually archiving? How do I make sure that I have business continuity, right? And if I have to, what is the next step along the ways? So it's really going back to the fundamentals that we as CIOs and other C-level execs know how to sit there and ask the question, but we have to be focused along the way to make sure that we're doing the right thing for the business, that the business itself can operate using the technology, and that we have set a platform, you know, moving forward, you know, doing all the right things around risk and all of that. I think, you know, Jay said it so wisely earlier in that, you know, I don't sleep a lot. I know I don't either, and I'm sure a lot of us others, especially during this time, but even normally in that, we're just so geared up around it that we just want to serve and we want to do the right things, not only for the people that work with us, but for our company, our customers, and everyone else.
Hey, Ken, thanks so much. You really nailed it. What a great job. Better than I could have done it. And thanks, Roxanne. Great to have you on the program. Adam, always good to see you. Lee, you're amazing. Thank you. And Gary, great job. And Dan, awesome. Really appreciate your engagement and support. Again, Ken, you nailed it. Thanks. Hey, next up, our security panel, Tim Crawford. Tim, welcome to the program.
Hey, Hunter, how are you?
Great. Glad to have you coming in from California, right?
That's right. California, sunny California.
Nice. Take it away.
All right. So I'm actually going to pick up on what Dan and Ken were talking about in terms of risk. And I'm joined by a number of esteemed colleagues, Snehal Antani, who was speaking with us earlier about his experiences, Chris Convey from Sharp Healthcare, Jason James from NetHealth, Jon Matthews from Duo Security, and last but not least, Rafael Sanchez from Feld Entertainment. So, you know, Becky was talking earlier about risk for the enterprise, and one of the things that came up in the last panel that I'll throw out to this panel is, you know, when we talk about work from home or work from anywhere, how has that changed your company culture? And maybe I'll start with Rafael on this, but how has that changed in how you think about security and securing your enterprise as we've now all distributed our footprint essentially?
Well, thanks, Hunter, for having me, and thanks a lot, Tim. I mean, if you look at our company, I mean, we're a live entertainment company, so we are traveling constantly. We have tours all over the world. So by nature, we were pretty much a remote. But I think to some of the comments that were made earlier, we've been working on the plan for Teams rollout, and we managed to do it in about 13 days.
Wow.
So, you know, when you have a need, and right now, you know, at first, of course, you still had, you know, folks that say, well, I still want to go back to my Skype. And I can tell you right now, every day I get positive comments that says, I really, really like this new platform. So, you know, we're getting more, even though we were remote, but I think we're getting a lot more effective and efficient in communicating, and it has been a great tool for all of us.
Yeah. You know, JJ, I know this is an area that you've talked a lot about in past conversations we've had, as well as other sessions. I mean, how has this changed the culture within your organization? Because you live in a different place than where your headquarters is, and I think that is a component to this.
Right. And what I've said for a while is culture is not defined by geography. If you look at what happens in social media, people often relate to others in spite of where they're located. Again, we're headquartered in Pittsburgh. I live in Atlanta. I've got teams spread out throughout the United States. What this has done for us is really been a boon for us to build culture, to engage with our employees. And so we've taken it as a more meaningful approach to make sure that we're creating virtual water coolers within Slack. We're giving employees an opportunity to connect with others that have nothing to do with work. I run a barbecue Slack channel at work. You know, we've got channels where people can show off their pets and share recipes. And we have executives reading stories to children because a lot of kids are at home right now. And then we have people bonding in a way that's beyond the concept of work. And in doing so, we're creating just this vibrant culture that I think eventually may have happened, but this is, COVID-19 has been a way for us to accelerate that in a way that I don't think would have happened organically as quickly.
Mm. You know, speed was something that came up in the last panel, right? Moving quickly, but being flexible and confident. You know, and I want to ask the panel, you know, how has this increased enterprise footprint really changed the thinking around cybersecurity? And Chris, I want to bring you into this as well. Maybe you can kick us off in this aspect.
Yeah, you know, working for a health system, we were largely on-prem, so the shift to remote was a big shift for us. Luckily, we did have the infrastructure to be able to scale and be able to flex and push people home, and we were able to do it in a fairly orderly fashion, not without bumps, of course. But, you know, I think one of the things that changed culturally from a cybersecurity perspective was, you know, when you think about things like Zoom bombing and all the stuff in the news that people were concerned about with this shift with COVID, it really created more of a sense of importance around security. You know, why we have technology governance, why we assess new technologies, and we just don't let people go out and do, hey, use Zoom or use FaceTime for whatever you're doing. And especially being in healthcare with telehealth, telemedicine, you have to be concerned about that stuff. What are the risks involved? And so people really got that sense of, wow, this is real, and we really do need to make sure that we assess the security of the technology that we use and the way that we use it.
So how are we doing that? And Jon, maybe you can offer some guidance here in terms of different ways that we can think about this, because let's face it, we've all had people working from home or working from anywhere, whether it's a hotel, whether it's an airplane, on the go, in their car, at Starbucks. That's nothing new for us. But what's new today is the scale in which we're doing this, right? And then there's a cultural component. Jon, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right that we're seeing the proliferation of this, and it was, I think it's only been accelerated by this new reality that we find ourselves in. Duo, you know, we've embraced zero trust. We've embraced this working style, you know, a few years back as we started to work on that product. And for us, it's really been, you know, it's really been a journey to be able to do this at scale. So today, our working posture, our work from home posture is not different than our in-office posture. We are, you know, our products allow us to check the access, check the health of the device that's accessing the system, as well as verify the identity of the user. So we can support people who are now finding themselves working from home or working even, you know, we have a few people that are, you know, working from their lake house or, you know, a co-working space that they're able to get into. So yeah, it's really, I think, you know, in the future, we're going to hear about, you know, zero trust is a bit of a buzzword in the industry right now. I think down the road, it's just going to be called security because this is the new normal. You know, I think we'll go back to offices. I think the, you know, previous discussion around that was correct, but I think you're going to find a lot of the workforce will find themselves continuing to work from home, you know, throughout this crisis and into next year. I think Twitter, you know, Jack announced a couple of days ago, he's like, you know, Twitter's going to go full remote because of this. And I think it is the future of how we're going to work as a technology industry and really a globally down the road.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with a guest on my podcast the other day, and he said that it goes from trust but verify to trust nothing and verify everything, which is kind of an interesting shift for us. Snehal, I know this is an area that that you're pretty passionate about. I want to get your thoughts in on this.
Yeah, it's actually funny. The slogan to the Horizon 3 startup we founded is trust but verify, with the trust but X'd out. it's verify only. So I'll give you a personal example. About 3 weeks ago, my home network was hacked. And it was, after I did my own forensics and worked through it, it was a close access operation. So somebody within 300 feet of my house had connected to a Wi-Fi extender, compromised it, moved to kick everybody off the Wi-Fi. And when we all reconnected, they were able to grab all of the passwords. And from there, I could actually see them trying to maneuver throughout the environment. And so I've had to spend a few weeks cleaning everything up. But two things happened within that attack as a bad guy. One is they harvested credentials. So they're able to find passwords and try to reuse those passwords elsewhere, whether it's my wife's passwords or my passwords or so on, for company accounts, amongst other things. And the second is, if I had done things like printed corporate information off of my home printer, they could have ripped data off of the printer history and done other things. So what's interesting is the new angles of attack created by working from home and how easy it is for attackers to come in. For me, it's a little bit different because of my national security work I did. I'm a very different target, but in general, how many easy ways there are to start at home and then pivot into the corporate network. And I can only imagine the nightmare that's going to cause for CISOs that are already overtasked at the moment to now think about their corporate network as their corporate network plus where appropriate aspects of home networks of their employees.
Yeah, you know, and we heard in the last conversation on the last panel about how innovation is just moving at a rate we just have not seen across the board. You know, Rafael, you know, one of the things that I know that you've talked about is where technology fits into this puzzle. I mean, culture is one piece, organization is another, process is another component we have to kind of rethink. Where does technology fit in from an innovation standpoint, especially in your world, which I have to believe has just been turned upside down probably more than most?
Yeah, it's a great question. So when you look at all the life in sports and the venues and what we're talking about, the acceptable number of people congregated in one place, there's a lot of talk about touchless transactions in the stadiums. I mean, imagine you going to a stadium, they're talking about limits and how do we sell tickets and how do we assure that the transactions that you may want to get in terms of merchandise can be done ahead of time. So again, this is also an accelerator because I'm a firm believer that this is going to be the future. And right now, we're looking at it in some cases that it's going to have to be a must-have future. I mean, we're working through, the other thing is the level of collaboration across the different modes like the MLB, the NFL, the NHL. I mean, we're all in this together. And once we build the protocols and we have the type of technologies, which in most cases is third-party products that we've all looked at, I mean, I think we all together come up with much better solutions.
Yeah. You know, and I want to kind of dovetail onto that and talk about the video conferencing and collaboration tools, because it's easy enough to say, hey, you know what, we're just going to put these tools in place and let it go to town. But I would think in the healthcare space, and this is where I want to bring JJ and Chris into the conversation, that's not as trivial as some might make it out to be. And there's more than just regulatory and compliance and privacy, but there are other challenges that you have to contend with too around culture, and just we're hearing about fatigue. Love to get your thoughts, Chris and JJ.
Sure, I can hit it off or start it off. So this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart, because you're absolutely right, especially in healthcare. The issue is this balance of being able to allow healthcare information to be shared, which is really, really important, but also keeping it secure and maintaining privacy. So deploying teams for someone like us, and I got to imagine other industries are the same way, it's a very delicate process. We're in the midst of assessing it right now because the organization is clamoring for it. You know, they want this ability to collaborate, and Teams and Slack, they're incredible tools. But you know, you start to get into scenarios about, well, you have outside guests that come in, and what are they able to download to their machine? And we have that in healthcare again. I mean, you've got physicians talking to other physicians of other health systems, of other practices. So it's difficult. But, you know, I would say that the tools that are in place today, especially when we focus on, you know, when you think about Microsoft Teams, they've done a pretty good job of being able to allow, but you've got to really assess what are you tweaking, what are you allowing, what is your stance and policy as a company, and making sure that the technology is actually implementing that stance effectively. And it's not a few knobs and switches. It is, you know, you got to think through all the scenarios.
Yeah, and
JJ,
for us,
I want to get your thoughts, but I also want you to offer in maybe some of the people component, right? That ultimately makes this real. I mean, we talk a lot about technology, but let's also talk about the people component.
Right, and for us, we had two scenarios. One was we were fortunate enough that we had already adopted an enterprise class secure video platform where people were collaborating internally. What we faced as a software company is we brought telemedicine functionality to many of our product lines at an accelerated rate. CMS had allowed basically the floodgates to be open. So healthcare providers could use everything from FaceTime and Teams and Hangouts and whatever it be in order to get it done during this crisis. As we looked for solutions, we wanted to go ahead and partner with providers that, number one, played in the healthcare space. We're already secure, we're already HIPAA compliant. And so there wouldn't be this need to go ahead and try to retract a product that we had already trained people on. You know, when you look at it, it's two different cultures. We're a technology company that operates in the healthcare space. We're not healthcare providers. And so if you're a healthcare provider, technology is not in your DNA. So we had to look for solutions that were very easy to use. You know, if you're looking at a rehab facility, it's a very different bandwidth consideration than a hospital. And so we had to look at solutions that had a broad scope of compression from a video capability standpoint, and being able to provide the best and really seamless service to an end user. Again, when you talk about culture, we have a culture of technologists and technology driven individuals serving people where technology is not in their DNA. So we had to look at solutions that were both. And so for us, it wasn't a single end-all be-all solution. So what we're using internally isn't the same as what we're embedding in our own products.
So let me follow up on that a little bit, JJ. I mean, what other educational changes are you making as part of the work from home? I mean, I'm sure you already had a number of things in place, but what's changed?
Sure, it's everything. So if we talk about just our internal teams, there is no work-life balance anymore. It's just work, right? You know, you've got people sitting in makeshift offices at their front table while they're trying to educate kids. And so at the same time, pets are running in and out of the screen. And so what we had to do is, number one, start and lead with a position of flexibility and empathy. Every soft skill that a leader needs right now is flexibility. These aren't normal times. You know, again, we're leading not only remotely, we're leading in the midst of crisis. So that flexibility is first and foremost needed. What we had to do was also make sure that our people had what they need. And let's start with flexibility. That means a traditional office setting and traditional hours doesn't work, because sometimes people do have to stop and tend to their children or let their dog out. So we had to focus on that need for flexibility. But we also had to retrain people in order to say, look, it is not end all be all work. How are you taking that break? You know, we've all talked about the Zoom fatigue, and this idea is that we are all connected right now and we're hyper focused, right? You know, if Tim and I were sitting in a room, you know, we'd be talking, but we'd be looking around. We might be looking at our mobile device. We might be looking out the window from time to time. It isn't to say we wouldn't be paying attention to each other. What we would have are these pauses, these evolutionary traits that have been built into focus and communication to give us a break. What we're having to train employees are, you can't remain hyper-focused for 8 hours a day. And first of all, there are studies right now that's showing workdays have expanded to 11 hours in the United States. So you can imagine being hyper-focused for 11 hours. And by the way, many of us on this call have. And you get through and you're like, holy hell, I need a drink. Right? And you're just like, I'm so exhausted. And so we have to retrain people in a way to make them realize that, number one, they have to be flexible. Number two, they have to take breaks. And number three, you just got to go with the flow. Right. And again, let's remind people to lead with empathy, because there are people having a hard time. We have some very, you know, outgoing people that can't touch and be next to people. And so as extroverts, they're having a hard time. You know, for years, introverts was like, you know, it'd be great if I could just work from home and not see people for days. And those people are loving life right now. But on the other end of that spectrum, we've got people that are having a hard time. And so we have to also offer that ability that whether it be through third-party services or through mentors within the own organization, if they need to speak to somebody, they have that ability, because some people need that shoulder, so to speak.
And I don't know what you're talking about in terms of distractions. Hold on a second. You know, Jon, I see you nodding your head, and I kind of want to bring you and Snehal into the mix, especially as we talk about some of these things that are changing for us moving forward. I mean, what does that look like? What does that roadmap look like from your perspective?
I'll start.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Snehal. Yeah.
Oh, I want to say, so one of the things, for instance, is a lot of the senior folks on my team, they actually enjoy working from home because they were already set up to have a dedicated space, get their work done, don't deal with the commute. With kids not being in school, that's made it complicated now, but in general, they preferred it. So now the question is, do we need dedicated office space, or do we just need to get together once every week or two for face-to-face time and some whiteboard time and then go back? And that's kind of one aspect, is which is the future of office space and collaboration, because it's still difficult to whiteboard remotely, and you miss that riff type experience, especially when you're creating or building software or whatever else. The second challenge too, though, is minimizing burnout. So how do you make sure that you do have a proper way to disconnect? When I worked from home in the past, for the first time, I would work from my kitchen table, my living room, my dining room, my bedroom, and so on. And my Wednesdays and my Saturdays felt the same. And I started to really burn out. And I had to have the discipline of having one dedicated room where I did my work, and I would not do work anywhere else in the house, and I would not enter that room unless I was working. And that was the way I was able to separate mentally work time versus home time. So I think we're going to see some of these practices emerge.
Jon?
Yeah, I think it's about letting people. I'll give you a perfect anecdote. I was having a one-on-one conversation with one of my leads, and his oldest daughter ran into the room and she said, "Hey, mom needs you in the backyard. The youngest is up the tree and she can't quite reach him now, and she's there to catch him." And we both kind of looked at each other and we're like, "You should go take care of that. We can find, this is family time stuff. Go take care of that." He was gone. He was gone for a while because his youngest was very scared at that point. But this is the new normal. We're finding that we need to embrace asynchronicity in our communication. I think things like Slack, we've come to expect an immediate response. So we're gonna Slack somebody. Why haven't they gotten back to me yet? And now it's, hey, I'm going to Slack somebody, and it might be 15, 20 minutes. It might be 3 hours. They might be teaching their kids math and trying to figure out what's going on with that these days. And it's not easy. And so this is the new normal where I think, people are shifting their work schedules. We're going to have to figure out new ways to collaborate. We have taken to, some of my software teams have taken to starting up a Zoom call or a WebEx call and leaving it open. And they're coming in and out, and they're collaborating each other. They leave their mics on, and so it is like being in that open office environment where you can say, "Hey guys, and I'm looking into the line of code. I don't understand this. Can somebody help me out?" And they might take that conversation elsewhere. But we're trying to replicate some of those collaborative things that we do in the office outside of the office, and I think that will only expand as this goes on.
Yeah.
Hey Tim, great job. Really wonderful job. We're going to wrap it up here.
Yeah, thanks to the panelists. I mean, they're the ones with the great insights here, for sure.
Excellent. Jon, Chris, thank you so much. Snehal, Jason, and Rafael, really appreciate everyone's active engagement. Ken, great job. Jay, awesome, really. Dan, thank you so much. Roxanne, for your support. And Lee, always good to see you. And Gary, great job. Stay connected and stay dialed in. And we look forward to seeing you in person in the fall in Atlanta.